Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members. A topic this committee and legislature are well familiar with, and that is the role that social media has evolved into as the new public square. That's where folks go to share their opinions, to debate, to hash it out. That's the new town square. And since almost a universal adoption of a handful of social media platforms and their practice of regularly censoring certain viewpoints, the legislature passed House Bill 20 in the 87th legislature, second special session, to protect citizen speech, so that it's not going to be, so that it won't be censored by social media companies. This happens to the left and to the right. House Bill 20 gave Texans the right to sue for an injunction if their viewpoints have been censored by social media platforms. However, because the law offers only an injunction as a remedy, it has not been a very effective remedy used by Texans. Senate Bill 1626 would change this to allow for statutory damages if a Texan decides to sue a social media platform for censoring her viewpoint, making it possible for everyday Texans to take action and protect their right to free speech. Procedurally, you may recall that House Bill 20 was challenged, went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. We were able to be there for the arguments, and the U.S. Supreme Court sent this bill back to the Fifth Circuit for further consideration. So this is a good time for us to be taking another look at the bill, so that as the courts continue to review it before they make a final decision, we give them we make the bill as strong as we can and make it easy for them. And so also the bill clarifies the definition of a social media platform, and also makes clear that HB 20 only constrains a platform's common carrier services. This came up when our bill was in front of the Supreme Court. There was a somewhat similar bill in the state of Florida. The Florida bill also limited the platform's own free speech. House Bill 20 did not, and that was important. We did that intentionally. They're free to say whatever they want to say. It's just when they limit what you say. And House Bill 20 further clarifies that SB 1626 further clarifies that Texas law does not limit the platform's own speech. Now, the political winds blow, and for recently some social media platforms have changed their position. They're not as overtly discriminating, but the power is there. The fact that it's all done in secret behind some faceless algorithm is a real concern for a lot of us, and it should be, no matter who's in favor or in power on any given day. So that is what the bill does, and I would thank you for listening and yield for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, are there any questions for the bill's author? All right, then we will go ahead and open up public testimony. The chair calls David Dunmoyer, Ken Moore, Caleb Troxclair, and Kevin Hale. David Dunmore, Ken Moore, Caleb Troxclair, and Kevin Hale for Senate Bill 1626 by Chairman Hughes. Well, thank you for being here today. We appreciate it. And why don't we take our beginning over here on this side, and we'll just move across, and we'll ask questions as we go. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Senators. Sorry, I'm out of breath. I just ran up from the extension. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators. My name is Caleb Troxclair. I'm here representing Texas.net, speaking in favor of Senate Bill 1626. Texas.net was founded in 1994 and was the first internet service provider in San Antonio and one of the first 50 internet service providers in the United States. Texas.net's founders, Ron and Carolyn Yokobitis, have spent their careers and their treasure fighting for free speech around the globe, including creating VPNs engineered to allow Chinese citizens to get around government censors to get real news from outside of China, and right here at home, championing policies such as House Bill 20, which the legislature adopted in 2021 to push back against social media censorship, in no small part thanks to Senator Hughes' great work on that legislation. House Bill 20 gave Texans the right to sue if their viewpoints have been censored by social media platforms. However, very few Texans have actually used this law to sue because the law only offers an injunction as a remedy, so someone who sues has no hope of recouping their costs for the lawsuit. Senate Bill 1626 would insert statutory damages into Texas law if a Texan decides to sue a platform for censoring their viewpoint, thus making the possibility of everyday Texans choosing to protect their free speech rights a more distinct reality. The bill rationally recognizes that harm flows to the censored speaker and those unable to receive the expression. The bill will give Texans more tools to fight back against censorship, with the hope that just the threat of damages being present in statute would dissuade platforms from censoring in the future. We also appreciate the language in the bill which clarifies the chapter is not applicable to services that are not common carriers. As we have maintained from the beginning of these discussions related to social media censorship several years ago, that the platforms absolutely do meet the common law test for common carriage because they hold themselves out to serve the public on uniform terms in an area that is affected by the public's interest. In closing, please support Senate Bill 1626 to enhance Texans' ability to protect themselves and their free speech rights. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Please introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Chair Hughes, Vice Chair Paxton, committee members. My name is David Dunmore with the Texas Public Policy Foundation, here in support of Senate Bill 1626. As Senator Hughes laid out and my colleague just said, it's well established that social media companies have reached a size such that certain ones are considered to be common carriers. And there's two reasons behind this. One is the colossal number of users and activity happening on these platforms. But also, social media companies assert as much in declaring that they are the modern public square. But in a modern public square, were the principles of free speech to apply as is necessary to make such a declaration, viewpoint discrimination and subsequent action taken against Texans on either side of the political spectrum would not be tolerated. The reality, of course, is that big tech hides behind the sword and shield of Section 230, immune from any liability if they censor or ban Texans on account of their viewpoint. And I want to highlight something that's conveyed in the findings section of this bill, which states, quote, the federal government has massively used the dominant social media platforms to abridge the freedom of speech, something that we've seen happening time and time again. And of course, this appeals to the First Amendment. The First Amendment concludes, importantly, stating the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances, to preserve our freedom of speech. That is exactly what this bill before us does here today. By allowing for statutory damages if a Texan sues a social media platform for censoring their viewpoint, this improves upon the existing law of House Bill 20 to ensure such a redress of grievances is accessible for everyday Texans who wish to take action and preserve their right to free speech. Importantly, this bill also adds some clarity in the definition of a social media company to ensure that the enforcement is clear and narrowly tailored to address the issue at hand here today. In closing, TVPF is very supportive of Senator Hughes' leadership on this issue, and we thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 1626. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Mr. Moore, would you introduce yourself and give us your testimony?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Ken Moore. I am for this bill, and I am representing myself. Social media has become the modern soapbox. Our old friend Alan Vera used to have this thing that there are 3 boxes. I think there were 4 boxes, actually. But so the first one was the soapbox. That's where you stand up and declare your position for everyone to hear. And then the second box is the ballot box, where you make yourself heard. And then the third box is the ammo box, when everything else fails. And anyway, social media has become that first box. It's become the soapbox where the public does get together and share ideas. It's very important. The last few years, we've seen several failures. We've seen things censored that were in fact true, like the Hunter laptop. Would it have changed the election? Who knows? But it was information that people had a right to know about. It was a real story. It was not a fake story from Russia. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, organizing tool. A lot of clubs, a lot of parties use social media as an organizing tool to get the word out to the members. Many candidates use social media for their campaigns, and that's pretty much the only thing they do use. Some don't even have a website. Lorena Bobbitt made a big deal about this when she was censored off of her Twitter account, and that was her campaign website. That was their way of getting things out. And so there have been so many abuses of this, and there does need to be a way to address it. And so I am very much in favor of this bill. and I ask you to pass it on to the full body.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Mr. Hill, if you would give us your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Hughes, the rest of the members, thank you for being here. My name is Kevin Hale, Libertarian Party of Texas. We are in support of 1626, which strengthens protections against digital censorship by dominant social media platforms acting as common carriers. The legislation reflects key libertarian principles by pushing back against government-enabled suppression of speech and reaffirming the individual right to free expression in the digital age. We oppose government and facilitated censorship. SB 1626 rightly recognizes that much of the censorship on major digital platforms has occurred through indirect pressure or coordinated from the federal agencies. LP Texas stands firmly against any effort by government, direct or indirect, to infringe upon the free speech of individuals. The right to speak and receive information freely must not be subverted by the state influence over private platforms. Holding government and privileged corporations accountable. LP Texas generally supports free markets and opposes regulation of private business. However, when the corporations act as a de facto extension of the government through regulatory favoritism, subsidies, or special legal protections, such as Section 230 immunities or government contracts, they cease to function in a purely private capacity. SB 26 aims to prevent these government's favored entities from using their position to discriminate based on viewpoint consistent with our commitment to free and open marketplace of ideas. In conclusion, since I'm running out of time, the Libertarian Party of Texas supports SB 26 as a necessary measure to defend free speech against government-enabled censorship and ensure digital forums remain open to all voices. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate all of you being here. Members, are there any questions for the panel of witnesses in front of us? All right. I had a question, and it may be better addressed to you, Mr. Chairman, but we'll just see. So the bill entitles the plaintiffs to the recovery of attorney's fees, but I don't think it goes the other way. Is that typical in a construction of a bill like this, or I just wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
It is, Madam Chair, thank you. It's a great question. And the award of attorney's fees is, there are two ways it's approached, I would say, in statute. In a breach of contract case, in a separate category, in a breach of contract case, if you and I enter into a contract and I breach the contract and you sue me and you win, I have to fulfill the contract, but you're still out your attorney's fees. So the law recognizes you can get your attorney's fees back to be made whole. And that's the idea here. The party that's been wronged is the user, not the social media company. The social media company is not alleging that they've been harmed by the user, but the user has been harmed. And so part of it is making that person whole as far as attorney's fees would go. Also, attorney's fees in some cases, like in the insurance code, are awarded as a penalty, right? If a company does bad things to consumers, that award of attorney's fees is another way we incentivize them to do the right thing. So this is in line with those statutes. I would say I'd certainly defer to the witnesses, but that's our intent.
Well, and I think obviously we're not wanting to enable frivolous lawsuits, right? And so in a case like that, are there protections already in place for those kinds of situations?
There are. The court has discretion, of course, how to rule. And under House Bill 20, as the law already exists, the bill that we've passed and it's before the courts today, under House Bill 20 already, if you get an injunction against the other side, the court may award your attorney's fees, but they may not. This bill goes a little further and says you can receive statutory damages for an offense like this. So it all has to go through a judge, it all has to go through a jury. So there are protections in place. It's a great question.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Members, any other questions for witnesses or for the author? All right, thank you. Appreciate you being here. You're dismissed.
Thank you.
All right. All right, is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 1626 by Senator Hughes? Hearing, seeing none, public testimony is now closed and the bill will be left pending.